and welcome to Closing Day. I'm Jeff Delgrand, your host. And Closing Day is a real estate show that's all about everything to do with real estate. Buying, selling, renovating, financing, staging, you name it, we cover it on this show. Our goal here is to give you some tips and some information that are going to help save you time, money, and make your whole real estate experience more enjoyable. Now today we're going to talk about homes, but a specific style of home. And we're going to cover his heritage homes. And to help me with this is Ross Hughes, real estate agent with Royal LePage. Ross, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
I so much appreciate this. Because nobody knows heritage homes as well as you do. As far as I'm concerned, you're the master, and we all bow down to that.
Thank you. Wow.
But my curiosity is, what started your interest in heritage homes?
Yeah, I do like heritage houses. I feel that, I guess what it comes down to, I feel like each one of them is an individual piece of artwork. I mean, nothing against all the newer houses that are built. They're great. They're functional.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at real estate from more of an artistic aspect, I feel like the heritage houses are just one-off. They're Picassos. They're all a Picasso in a way. If you think about it, there's only one of them, and they're pretty much original from one another. It's not like really a model of different heritage houses.
Yeah, and you can see that coming through because you do the videos, when you're listing a house, and it's just, you're so excited about the home and every aspect of it. And and I was just using the example earlier on, saying that we were trying to finance a home, and we went to the appraiser and to the lender, and we had found a video you did of this home like 3 years ago. And we gave it to the appraiser and the lender and said, this is how beautiful this home is. And they didn't even have to walk into it. They used your video and financing was done. It was great.
Sweet. Okay, wow, there's another tick in the box, right?
It was just, your passion shows through for sure.
Awesome, that's very cool. Wow,
yeah.
That's amazing.
So now, every town has heritage homes, but what makes a heritage home a heritage home? Now, it may be a basic question, but I don't know. What is it then?
No problem. Actually, I think the word heritage gets thrown around, and sometimes it can be looked at as possibly a negative. So heritage essentially just means historic, and it just means it's old. I know it sounds silly. It's as arbitrary as that. It's old.
Kind of like
a
me?
lot of, was that?
Kind of like me?
No, you're not heritage.
Oh, darn. Right.
No, but basically, I think for the most part, a heritage house would be looked at something maybe around 100 years old, maybe 80 to 100 years old. So you have those arts and crafts houses from the early 1900s.
Yeah.
And then the late 1800s. Like in Orangeville, we have like the more like Victorian, as people know them as.
Yeah.
So basically, we have like different types, but older generally means heritage. So around 100 years is around the mark that we kind of think of them as being heritage.
Okay.
Where sometimes people get tripped up is designation of heritage. So if people say, oh, that's a heritage house. Ooh, I don't want a heritage house, because they're worried about it being designated. Not that it's a bad thing, but I just want to make sure people realize that designated means that it's a protected heritage house. So the way that it looks on the outside of the front of the house is protected.
Right. So protected means you can't change it, or?
Literally, it means it can be changed.
Yeah.
But you would have to get the okay from a governing body to be compliant with it. So say, for instance, you had a beautiful Victorian house and you wanted to paint it orange just because it's Orangeville, right?
Okay.
You're going to paint it orange. That would be, you could get away with that with a historic house, like a 100-year-old house. You could paint it orange if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But with a house that's designated, that means you could not paint it orange. There'd be big trouble for you for doing that, because it's now it's literally almost like a architecture, not an architectural, but like it's protected. So now it's the outside of the building is actually something that everybody cares about, not just you.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that, because a bunch of orange houses around town would just be odd.
Yeah, it could be kind of weird.
Could be. Yeah, or vinyl siding on a new home, right? No, I guess everybody has their own thoughts. So an older home that's not designated, you've got that, I guess, that flexibility. Now, does a designation create a value to a home?
That's a really good question, and there's a lot of that going on in Orangeville right now, where we're talking about having districts in Orangeville that are protected.
Okay.
So there's a lot of discussion going back and forth. I personally feel if you look at a town like Oakville, Oakville has designated areas that the houses are protected.
Yeah.
So like literally a district, and everything in that district is protected. That's what we're kind of looking at up here in Orangeville. That I feel has made those houses so desirable.
Really?
I think, as far as I know, there's like waiting lists for people, like with realtors down there waiting to get one of these like very specific Victorian homes or, you know, historic homes in downtown Oakville. Imagine how expensive they must be in Oakville alone. Like, wow.
Of course.
Forget about it being in a special area, but I think it will add value. Because if you think about it, you or the person you sell it to or the person they sell it to or the person they sell it to, it's always going to be the same. It's always going to have that look. You can do anything pretty much you want inside the house.
Oh, really?
But the facade from the street, you can even put additions and everything. You can put a garage on it. You can do all kinds of things. But the facade is what we care about. It's that original look. You see sometimes in New York, they'll build a whole building in behind a facade.
Yes, yeah.
And the facade exists. It's the old-fashioned, like, original facade, and they've got this modern building in behind. It's kind of like that, but on a lesser scale.
Well, that's cool. So you can do stuff inside the home.
Yes.
Okay, but let's take a heritage home, an older home.
Okay.
In its existing state, what are the advantages or disadvantages of an older home, 100-year-old home? What do they do differently then than we do now?
That's a good question. Like, there's a lot of different things. Okay, so as, say, the original builder probably made the house fairly small. A lot of times they tend to be small.
Yeah.
But then they would have like these additions, or what we call in the Heritage Board is tails.
Tails, okay.
Tails, because they're almost like putting a tail on a house. But sometimes you can see like 2 or 3 of these additions. I can always see them when I walk into this house, because you kind of walk into a main part of the house, then you go into a secondary, and sometimes a third kind of addition. You kind of get that feeling because people are adding on space. A lot of times the second addition was a summer kitchen.
Okay.
Because back in the day, of course, they didn't have stoves like we have now. They'd have to have actually fire going. Imagine having that going in your house in the summer.
Oh, especially these summers, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you have these summer kitchens, so they're kind of off the main part of the house. They probably have windows for a cross breeze, so it just pulls most of the heat out. Yeah. But they're cooking meals at this particular stove. So now that's all been removed, and now it's like a living room.
Oh,
you got it? So it's pretty cool. It's pretty neat when you see houses. Like I personally live in a Victorian home, and it has a big addition on the back, and the brick is so close to the same brick on the main house that you know this summer kitchen is probably dollars to donuts. It's a summer kitchen. Yeah. Was probably put on, like, I'm guessing, like under 20 years after the original house, which is kind of cool. I really should look into it more, but
I never thought of it as a summer kitchen. You see the homes, right? You see the basic home, and then you see the addition on the back, and it's like, oh, you obviously saved up a few extra bucks and then built an addition, but it makes sense. It's even more functional.
It's interesting, right?
It is. Yeah. It's like there's a purpose for that rather than just size.
It tends to
functionality.
It tends to be why it's on the first level. Sometimes there's no second level to it.
Right.
Because it's just a summer kitchen. Neat.
That is neat. Now, so Heritage Homes, because it's an age, so is Heritage Homes designation, or it's both designated and undesignated?
So yeah, I guess I'm not. So the designated just means it's protected.
But they're both heritage, even though one's not.
But everything's a heritage house because it's historic.
So historic homes could be out in the country. They could be in town. They could be.
Yep. Like a lot of times they're like farmhouses. There's tend to be like 1800s. Yeah. There's like I've noticed 1850 ones in the area.
Oh wow.
1850s. Like but we don't tend to get them that old really. Like there's nothing, not that I've seen. I could be corrected here that. In this area, there's nothing really super old. I can't remember what the oldest house in Orangeville is, but I want to say it's around 1850s.
Okay.
I wish I had some of my heritage experts here that could have helped me.
Yeah, that's all right.
I lean on some people sometimes.
That's all right, because I mean, every small town you go into tends to have that downtown core with the beautiful homes.
Right.
Right, and then so I guess those would be heritage homes, and some downtown cores have got downtown cores that I guess are heritage too, like commercial.
Well, actually, in Orangeville, our downtown core on Broadway, where all the big buildings are, where all the stores are, and the restaurants, that is a heritage designated area.
Oh, really?
So all those buildings, just because of where they are designated. So you need permission to change the facades of those.
That's nice, because that downtown core, in my eyes, is beautiful. Orangeville's got one of the best downtown cores. I think one of the reasons is it's got a wide street.
Yes, that's cool. And we won, I think, prettiest street in Canada a couple of years back, didn't we?
Yeah. So. And that was great for Orangeville. Not picking on any specific town, but you go into a town like Newmarket, their main street is 2 lanes, and that's about it. Okay. And the retail stores have a hard time competing, or no one can park. There's no shoppers there for them. Right. And it's like whoever built that street didn't do it with the same type of thought as they did in Orangeville. And I think Alliston's got a fairly wide main street as well. So some of these towns have got wider streets than others, and that goes back, I guess, over 100 years ago. And I don't know, who would have thought that stuff through, or was it?
I haven't even thought of it that way. That's very, very interesting, because we used to have diagonal parking on Broadway there.
Really?
Yeah, it used to be diagonal, and then they put the water feature in the middle of the street.
The water feature, okay.
Yes.
The controversial water feature we're talking about.
Maybe I should leave it alone. Okay. That's for a whole other episode.
Yeah, that is, and it's a little politically charged, so I'm not going to touch that
we'll
one
walk away
either.
from that. We'll go back to heritage.
Yes, yeah,
Awesome.
we'll stick with that. All right, so, but now, what got you into the heritage? I know heritage homes aren't the only homes that you sell.
No, I sell all kinds of different ones.
Yeah, but you tend to have a real talent for that, and I think I've even heard other real estate agents say, you have a heritage home, it's for Ross Hughes. So
really? Okay, wow.
So it's kind of neat to
That's
to
an
hear
honor,
that.
really, yeah.
Well, it's because you put a lot of effort into it, I guess, and the way you show them and on the videos and stuff.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, it's funny. I lived in a brand new house in Orangeville, and it was a great house. Like I said, I can't complain. I did the odd time drive into the wrong driveway because it looked the same as all my neighbors' houses.
Okay.
But I'm not saying anything bad about it. But it's interesting that I went and visited a friend of mine, and he had an arts and crafts house.
Okay.
An arts and crafts house are those ones that tend to be mainly bungalows that are early 1900s, like around 1920s.
Yeah.
And they're almost like the early modern. I always call them early modern because they went from all the crazy frilly like trim work and everything to this very solid, masculine looking trim work.
Yeah.
And the arts and crafts, and those big huge pillars on the front of the house with the big
I know what
huge
you're talking
porches.
about. Yeah.
Those ones they're so cool. Like, I love those as well. But I had a friend who had one of those, and I just fell in love with it. I came back home and I went to my wife. We have to get an older home. Like, they're just so cool. Like, I'd never really been exposed to it.
Really?
And sure enough, I bought one on Zina Street and then moved across the street to another house on Zina Street, which is a very long move across the street. You'd think it would be easy, but it was hard.
Across the street? Well,
I moved across the street, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that would be a hard move. Right?
It's harder than you think because you tend to do a lot of walking.
I guess. That's something.
Anyway, yeah.
All right, so that's what got you into the heritage homes. And
yeah.
So you've been in and out of a lot of heritage homes, I would guess, in the area. You've seen a lot
I
of
have
them?
seen a good amount of heritage houses. There's a few that are still on my wish list, but I have seen a lot of them. I'm very lucky.
Okay.
Especially someone like me who loves them.
All right. Well, when we come back, I want to talk about the different types and styles of heritage homes.
Okay.
But there's one question I want you to prepare for, and that is the most interesting heritage home you've ever seen.
Ooh. Okay.
All right. So we'll be back shortly.
Okay.
Okay. Hang on. We'll be back in just a moment. Thanks. Welcome back to Closing Day. I'm Jeff Delgrand, your host, and today I have Ross Hughes, real estate agent from Royal LePage, with me, and we're talking about heritage homes. Now, we were talking about the different, what makes a heritage home, and the age, and whether they're in Orangeville, and I mean, it sounds like they're all over, and you've seen quite a few of them. Now, if somebody has to do work on a heritage home, is there anything unique about that they have to think about?
A lot of times, like maybe if you're doing exterior work, the brick is like a different size than brick they make nowadays.
Okay.
But then a lot of times it's very simple to get reclaimed brick.
Okay.
You can find that pretty quickly. At least I haven't had too much trouble. Things like that you have to keep in mind. But generally the interiors, I mean, things to watch out for, I guess, would be like if you're looking to purchase one, is that they generally you get updated ones nowadays. But then the odd time I'll go into a house and I'll find things like maybe galvanized plumbing.
Oh, right.
So galvanized plumbing has to come out and be changed. It's not that expensive. It's not that expensive. Most of the time, it's you can find it in the basement and it runs upstairs. And first thing that the homeowner panics, but really, it's not that big a deal. You just cut it, then they run that new flexible PEX line.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
And just runs it up, and it's really quite economic. I think the most expensive I've seen replacing was $1,200, which is not crazy.
Think
really,
of replacing the plumbing in a house. Yeah,
right? It's not that bad. Knob and tube wiring tends to be the big villain.
Yeah.
That people worry about, and that's basically a wiring that I want to say it was in like maybe the 1930s or 1940s. So it's not original to the house.
Oh, okay.
But that's been put in the walls and the ceilings, and it has two wires. And a lot of electricians say that's actually the safest wiring that's ever been made because the two wires can never touch each other because they're usually so far from each other.
Right.
But the insurance companies don't like it.
Of course.
But that can also be remedied relatively easy. It's harder than the plumbing, but not a lot harder.
Now, is there any government grants or anything to help with that type of?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Sadly, yeah, not that I know of.
Yeah, I know there's like efficiency grants, heating efficiency and electricity efficiency.
Yeah, do you still have those? I'm not sure. They did for a while there, but
yeah, I should have done my homework before
yeah, me too.
I checked. I'll do it afterwards, so that'll be another show.
A new show.
Altogether. So you talk about some of the uniquenesses of them when you're doing work on them. What type of things would you suggest someone does to a heritage home?
Well, a lot of times, like a lot of houses I see in Toronto. So, like, imagine a lot of the houses in Toronto in the more core areas of Toronto tend to be historic exteriors. But then a lot of people have done so much work inside, and they're like right up to date, modern houses. Like, they're beautiful. I love it.
Right.
I love it when people maybe like work with all the trim work, the things that, you know, if you were to throw them away, it'd be a shame.
Okay.
You know, like the beautiful doors, the trim work, I don't know, like maybe sometimes the floors, right? The floors can be so amazing.
Yes.
But, you know, if someone was to refinish the floors and like repaint the trim or have it refinished, it's amazing with brand new, even like IKEA type modern furnishings or like cabinetry in the kitchen and everything, you can really make this hybrid look, which is so really, like a lot of people really like that.
Okay, so you advise people keep a little bit of that original heritage home feel and...
Yeah, it's not a bad look. I think it's like it tends to be a little more of a modern play on it nowadays. We used to have a lot of people that would have that really historic indoors of the house as well, but they'd also bring in all the antiques. So it felt very, very old.
Yes.
But nowadays we got a lot of younger people coming in, and they've got that much more contemporary look of their furnishings and paint and whichever, and just embellishing those architectural elements of the house inside, you can really make the house sing. Like tin ceiling, for instance.
Oh,
tin ceiling is killer. You have that, and it's beautiful. And you can also even get real tin ceiling, but it's like made today, but it's made like the old days. So
I think I've seen some in the hardware store.
It's well, there's places that will specifically make it too, where you can, you know, you don't have a hardware store one if you want one that, you know, could pass as being you didn't put it in, right?
Yeah, well, if I put it in, people will know my workmanship. Yep.
You got a mid-century house too. It wouldn't quite as work, but
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, I'd have to change that look
well, it's all good
as well. So, what advantages are there to the layout or the style of a heritage home compared to a new home?
Like the layout indoors. Like, how does that differ from them?
Yeah,
you don't tend to have like as much open concept. Open concept is a very now look to houses.
Okay.
Going back to what I said about people like in Toronto, for instance, the only reason I'm saying that is because I saw so many amazing places, but those people tend to open them right up. So they would literally like take down double brick walls. Double brick just is basically like a foundational wall in the house.
Okay.
So it's literally 2 or 3 in some cases stacks of bricks together. So if you see an older house, they're generally being held up by the outside of the house, not the inside of the house.
No way.
So when you're a modern house, like in Montgomery Village right now, would be like they'd build a whole story and then they'd build a story on top of that story.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas these ones are like basically built with the brick and they're kind of hung almost between the bricks. But they're held up with other things like walls and stuff as well. But they tend to be a little easier to pull walls and things out because it's called balloon framing, and they're framed across the brick
I did not know
exteriors. It's kind of neat, yeah. So conceivably, you should be able to run a bulldozer right through the main floor, and the whole thing should stand. I don't advise anybody doing that, but, but apparently that is the case. They're built that way, most of the time.
Oh.
I do not warranty you doing any bulldozer driving in your house.
Okay, well, you didn't hear it here first. Then
don't even know what you're talking about.
Don't try this at home. So when someone buys a home, they're doing some work to it.
Yeah.
Now, I think I know the answer to this question, but like with a log cabin, it tends to shift.
Okay.
With a heritage home, I'm guessing because they're brick, probably don't. Is there anything?
They do kind of shift a bit too. I mean, you'll find a lot of people will say, well, I go into an old house and I can feel like slopey floors.
Okay.
So they do tend to shift as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they definitely do because, I mean, all the floors are hanging on those walls, right?
Okay.
So they just have to shift a little bit, and you can feel that little bit of a swale. I almost don't feel it anymore. I go in a house that's perfectly square, and I don't even feel the square.
Okay.
It feels a little off in the square, perfectly square.
So you could do those old-fashioned Batman movies?
Yeah, exactly, right? You got to be really careful.
So, okay, and now here's a question I always thought about in a heritage home is, today we tend to use a lot of closet space. Now, I would think older homes, do they have closet space? I mean, I haven't been into a lot to really see. Or is this something you would add to it, or?
A lot of people add them, and that's kind of almost where the armoire was born. But armoires tend to be kind of that like antique-looking kind of concept.
Yeah.
Interesting story, and I don't know if this is true, but someone told me this way back, was that the reason why you don't see a lot of closets in Victorian houses is because a closet would constitute that being a bedroom, and therefore your taxes would go up because you have a bedroom. But if you didn't have a closet in the room, it wasn't a bedroom, and the taxes wouldn't go up.
Really?
And then the other one I heard too is you see a lot of 1.5 story houses. So the upstairs is kind of like this.
Yes.
The sloping ceilings. Because it wasn't a full second story, again, you save taxes because it wasn't a full second story.
Really?
So you're only being taxed on the main floor. So if you didn't have any closets, or you only had a half story, as we call it, upstairs, you're not paying a lot of tax.
Okay, well.
I think they've caught up with us now.
I think so. I believe, these days property taxes are like another mortgage payment.
In some cases, yeah.
Yeah. Before the break, I'd asked you about the most interesting heritage home you'd ever seen. So, not to put you on the spot, but I know you've been into a lot of homes, heritage homes. What comes to mind?
Well, right off the bat, one of the coolest houses in Orangeville, and actually I was lucky enough to sell one side of it last year, is a house called the King House.
Right.
And it was originally a single house, and it is massive. Yeah. But it's a semi now, so it's 2 houses. Oh. And it is if you go on, I think it's like 18 Wellington Street in Orangeville. Yeah. If you go there, you'll know what I mean. It is a magnificent, very, very large home. It is Second Empire style. So it's a very old house. I wanted to, maybe 1880. 1888, something like that, or 1890. Okay. I remember it was something like that. It's fairly old. Yeah. But it's made in a French architecture. So there's only like 2 or I think there's 3 of them in town. There may be more, could be wrong, but I think there's only 3 Second Empire buildings in town. Yeah. One of them is the Smokehouse building, on Broadway. That's Second Empire.
Really?
And then there's another one on Second Avenue. Sorry. Right next to Dodds and McNair, there's a Second Empire, and it has like that roof line that comes over the front and the little dormer windows.
Oh, right. I know that one.
Really different looking. It's cool. You go to France, they're all over the place. But there's really neat to have them here in Orangeville. But that is just a magnificent building. It was 3 stories. I think it was like 3,500 square feet each side. It's like it's so big for a semi. That's like really big.
That is.
And for a semi being so huge, it blows my mind. Not like some of the other semis you see that are like a quarter of the size of that, which generally is a perfectly good size.
Right. Yeah, so is that, did you see it when it was a semi, or did you see it as the whole home?
I think it was before my time, before it was actually, I think it's been a semi for a long time.
Try not to date you that quickly.
Yeah, try not, right? But there's been a lot of cool places. Some places I've seen a little bit of evolution on, which is kind of neat. There's a house I call the Taj Mahal, okay? It sounds kind of ridiculous, but it's the house I've always had the barometer. It's 67 Zina Street. Right. It's always been my favorite house, and like I've been lucky enough to have the hand in selling it, I think, like 4 times.
Oh, wow.
And just because I just love this house. But it's 3 stories, and the gentleman who his name was Ted Piggott, and he was on the Heritage Board for a long time in Orangeville.
Yeah.
He had another building on Broadway, but he was just did such beautiful work, and he was all about restoration.
Yeah.
And it was very much that museum house that we talked about earlier, but everything was done to perfection. He had Kurt's millwork, did all the millwork inside to anything that was damaged. The house was painted white at one point, and he just lovingly got it back to brick.
Nice.
It's a crazy house. And then I saw someone had put a brand new kitchen in, and I think that really kind of brought it to the next level. It was really cool. So
that sounds very cool.
Oh, that's one of my favorite houses in town.
So what tips would you have for somebody who's interested in buying a heritage home?
I think that it's good to, I would say it's good to have an idea of if there's anything you wanted to do to that house down the road. So maybe if you had plans to renovate or whichever, it might be good to maybe, if you're looking at one, to maybe bring a contractor with you for any ideas you had, any kind of changes you wanted to make. I find in my experience a lot of people want to do that. They want to kind of put their own mark on it to a degree. So say, for instance, they wanted to put new flooring in or they wanted to put a new kitchen in. It's always good to get those experts maybe up front.
So get a contractor,
I always say a good home inspection is good to get done on a home, a Victorian home, because there's things, you know, more so in maybe an older house than a new house, because you know the code has changed a lot over the years.
Yeah.
Some things are I find a lot of things are not that big a deal. I tend to not get too worried about, I guess because I know so much about them. I guess why I like heritage houses so much, because some of the pitfalls that a lot of people would worry about, I always know there's a fairly easy solution to have that house.
Yeah, because you've got the knowledge and the experience, and you've seen lots of homes like that.
Yeah, and I just feel like it's worth it to research. It is to maybe make some changes or some fixes or negotiate something that works for everybody so that you can get into that house, which is a one-off.
Okay. All right, Ross, we're going to wrap it up. You have a ton of information in a short period of time. Thank you very, very much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jeff. This has been great.
Homes, and thank you very much for tuning in. Jeff Del Grand from Closing Day, and we'll see you next time. There you go.